And for men, I think most of the stuff out there is really focused on getting a woman and getting money. And there's not a lot of heart and soul there. And just, wanting to create a community where we're supported, where we can have those difficult conversations, where we can be resourced, and where it's not this bravado fest, but it can be more of an authenticity fest.
Hey there. So I have a very special episode today. On this episode, I got to bring two of my favorite men on the show, Morgan and Shawn. And if you've been listening to Pleasure Central Radio for a while, you might know who Shawn is already. Shawn was co-host of Pleasure Central Radio with me for about a year. And I can't even remember when that ended. It was just before the pandemic, I think. And we did a lot of shows together. Shawn was such a good friend. We really had a beautiful, creative relationship. And I appreciate him so much. And he was able to come back on the show and interview Morgan with me. Morgan, who is my personal coach, has been my coach for the last 3 years or so. He is an amazing man. He's starting to do leadership coaching for men. And when he told me that that's what he was going to do, I got so excited. I have felt like that is his calling for years. And I can't wait to see what he does with this. Anyway, here's the episode. This is Shawn and Morgan and Rebecca, me.
Hello, Radiant Rebecca.
Hey there, Shawn, and welcome back.
We are deep back into the center of Pleasure Central Radio Studios one more time. It's nice to see you.
Yeah, you too.
We have a great little episode coming up today. I'm excited to talk with this man. When I think of him, I think of, he's a doctor, so he's a chiropractic doctor, and he's a shaman. And I experienced some Brendan Burchard work with him, which is like the cerebral, go do it. And I've experienced the spiritual side of him as well. I really love him for that reason. I love the way that he brings both sides of life, spiritual and secular, and brings them together in a really nice way for all of us. So I'd love to say hi to Dr. Morgan Oakes.
Hello, Rebecca. Hello, Shawn. Good to be here.
Very exciting to have you. So you are in Denver now.
I'm about an hour north of Denver, so right on the Front Range. And after 10 years in Seattle, I've come back closer to home.
So maybe I'll pop in here and add a little bit of something too. I've known Dr. Morgan for, 5-6 years now. He's been working as my coach for 2 years. We've gone through a couple of cycles of the high performance coaching together. And I got to say, I've found it to be hugely valuable. It was really interesting when the pandemic hit and I realized income was going to be changing and my expenses were going to be shifting and I need to cut some things out. And as I was looking at what I was going to change, coaching with Morgan Oakes was the first thing. I was like, yep, that's staying. That's definitely staying. So thank you, Morgan. You've been a huge support for me, helping keep me grounded and balanced and finding how I can keep reaching for what really matters to me, taking action to make those steps. So thank you so much. I just want to say huge appreciation.
Yay, applause. And that's actually how you and I met. Rebecca was one of Morgan's, is that one of your first speaking?
It was, I think it was at my first one-day live event.
Yeah. And it was a great event. In fact, I started working with you in coaching as well shortly after that. And that was a great event. And that's, again, where I experienced my first experience of you with bringing both worlds into personal development.
Yeah. And it was beautiful that you brought that up, that's where we really connected and talked. Like we knew about each other in the community before then. But, if you go to the kind of place where everybody is like-minded and curious and open and willing and has the courage to actually speak about the things that are on their heart, that was what that event was like. And be able to connect with you there and say, oh, hey, you have a vision that I feel like I can support a bit. And then I had a vision that you felt like you could support a bit. That is the kind of magic that happens at things like this, that it just doesn't happen everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Us doing this is actually a product of that.
Oh my God.
Right? Because it was shortly after that we had dinner.
Yeah.
And there was 4 of us sitting around the table at the time. We had dinner and you mentioned something about starting it. And then somebody else mentioned it and it was just like, oh, here it goes, off to the races.
Yep.
That is so great to know that. I didn't actually realize that. And it's interesting. I've talked to other people about this. And I think for this podcast as well, Rebecca, like you probably rarely have an idea of the impact of the lives that are changed, the relationships that are changed. And to be honest, I didn't know that the two of you and this coming together came out of that event. So what a huge gift even being on here today to learn about that.
And for us too, we've had some really great time doing this.
Definitely.
So that's a great segue, actually, Morgan, into what we wanted to talk with you about today. We know we've got some experience with you, like we say, through some of the coaching work that we've done with you. And I know for a fact that you are all about making an impact for people. And we wanted to talk to you about your latest project.
Yeah, I'm excited to share. It's interesting. I think even with that event and with the coaching I do, I'm always trying to blend great research about productivity and performance. And also, how do you address the soul and the emotions and that other side of being human? And hopefully this next thing that is coming is a great blend of that as well.
Can you tell us a little bit about it? Is it an online program? Is it a one-on-one coaching program? What's your vision?
Yeah, so the main focus right now is a bit of, one-on-one like coaching work with people as well as speaking. And again, with the kind of the balance, like it can be looked at a couple different ways. Like how do we get that deep level of clarity where we know exactly what we're supposed to be doing? How do we bridge that clarity with courage? A lot of times the missing element, we know what to do, but we're not willing to step into it. And then on the other side of that, how do we stay in inspired action? And I think so much of the action that gets taken in business and life, especially in this country, is just pure action for action's sake, as opposed to inspired action, something that's, bigger than ourselves. It comes from that really divine place in our heart, our gut, outside of us. And so bringing that into what I'm doing. And then on the side of that, I'm also going to be working more directly with men in like a group, an online group type form. With that, I feel like women have been so amazing about doing their personal growth work, doing their healing work, creating communities, really banding together to lift each other up. And a lot of what I see out there for men is leaning into more of the traditional and maybe less healthy, just focuses on, can I get a woman? And can I make money? And ignoring the rest of it, just going after this hyper macho version of the world. And so hoping to create something that's got a little bit more balance, a little more body, mind, and spirit, and just a place that men can, authentically share what's going on in their lives and also really support each other. And hopefully I can share and provide some tools that will help elevate their lives as well.
Hopefully. I think you're selling yourself short. It's so interesting. Like one of the reasons why I've loved having you as my coach, Morgan, is I get ideas and I have a ton of things that I want to do. And in some of the coaches that I've worked with before, they'll be very task focused. Okay, have you done the things that you said you were going to do last time? No, I may have done one or two of them, but I did the most important things. But with you, it's, did you take the inspired action that you needed to take? And that is a completely different story. I always have a different answer for that because inspired action is easy to take. And because that's your focus, it's been really helpful for me to help balance my inner masculine and feminine and allow that receptivity and that being able to go out and get things done and having that support for that. So I'm really excited that you're doing something specifically for men.
Yeah, thank you. And even to touch on that, I think an accountability partner is a person that's good at doing those things. Like we met, here's what I said I'm going to get done in the next week or month. And then you meet again and it's literally reading down the list. What did I do? And I think there's just a lot more to be said about just because our conscious mind says, I need to do these 10 things. And then life goes sideways, a relationship changes, a business opportunity arrives, a health issue comes into the mix. And ultimately, are we just moving our lives forward in a way that's meaningful? And if we're not, hopefully I'm asking good questions to see why there might be resistance there. And the other thing I'd say about you, Rebecca, is you're doing so much work, right? You're leaning into coaching, you're leaning into other outside supports and spiritual practices and spiritual communities. And so when you're doing things like that, there's just a momentum of growth that I'm just trying to help put a paddle in the water with you every time we chat. And you're doing so much on your own that it makes it easy and it makes it really enjoyable.
Thank you.
I love the direction that we're heading here because in the little chat that we had just before we started the recording, you said something about like a Nike complex that a lot of us have. And I'd love to hear more about, you're talking about inspired action. Like what would it take for us to move into a space of inspired action? Any suggestions and thoughts about how to do that?
Yeah, I think when you're in a community that is focused on something different, it really takes a lot of conscious effort and awareness to be an individual. And the reality is we live in a Nike just do it society, like just do it, just do it, just do it. We have people like Gary Vee that will brag about not having a weekend for 10 years. And it's this hustle or die type consciousness. And especially as Americans, we've really bought into it. And if you travel internationally, you'll have people ask you, what's that about? And so I think for us living in the US and living in this energy, it requires a lot of consciousness to go, what is it I really want? What's my definition of success? Not my parents, not society, not the other people in my neighborhood, but what's my definition of success? And for most people, it's going to tie more directly into something that's inspired, connection with family, relationship, health, connection with the divine, or mindfulness or meditation, however you want to label that. And even within business, there's lots of ways to make money. And a lot of times the people doing that, you hear about the soul loss that they describe. And they might even use those words. They're like, yeah, I sold my soul to the company and I just go put in my time. And then they start looking for things outside of that, whether it's an Amazon Prime addiction or places where they're not being honest within their relationship, however that honesty would be defined. They're leaning into substances or they're just numbing out, And so I think for all of us, if we can let go of all the external shoulds and internal shoulds, and really come into a place to, what's my heart want? What's my gut? What's actually fulfilling? What pulls me forward in a beautiful way? And when I look back on my life, what do I want the mixture to look like? Kind of that deathbed question of, am I going to be proud that I worked 10 years worth of weekends? Or am I going to be happy for the moments that can never be recreated if it's just with yourself or those that you love?
Rebecca and I have talked many times about Abraham Hicks on the show. And I really appreciate how Abraham talks about flow. And yes, you can, to your point, our culture here in America tends to really add a lot of value to, I worked my ass off. And man, like you said, I haven't taken a weekend in 10 years. I haven't had a vacation in 60 years. And many of us applaud that kind of work mentality. And that would be like the just do it mentality. And man, if you're putting your paddles in the water and using your oar to move in flow downstream, there's tremendous things that can happen inside of that. So
you can have all your weekends, an extra day or two off a week, and get 3 times as much done.
3 times as much done. Yeah, exactly. Whether it's money or relationship or fun or whatever you're looking to increase in your life.
Yeah. And I think there's little tools too, as far as, are we proud that we put in 80 hours? Or like you said, if you can get 3 times as much done, is it more about productivity? Is it more about what's that driver or motivator? Is it a certain number of people you're wanting to help? Is it a certain amount of income to take care of your family? What's the metric that you're looking at? What is it that's really driving you? And if you can take it away from this false pride of I worked 80 hours or I didn't take these days off and really focus it on that other thing, a lot of times there's ways to get there faster and more efficiently and get the outcome without the struggle, with less struggle, maybe I should say.
And if you're putting it, so I want to get back to the inspired action piece, because even if one does value an 80-hour work week, if a person decides to put 80 hours into inspired action, imagine the difference between that versus just banging against something. So what are your top ways for people to get an idea of inspired action, of where they should be moving, what focus, what kind of direction they should be heading, regardless of what area in life they're focusing on?
Yeah. One of the biggest things might be just stopping. Stop what you're doing. I feel like life becomes this, like the chicken dance that they do at weddings, and everybody's like, no, 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 and they're just moving and moving and it's speeding up and it's speeding up. And if you ask somebody in that phase of the wedding party to think of another dance or to do something different, it'd be very hard. And I think that's what happens in life. And so how can you stop so that you can just think about other things? And maybe that stopping is a 30-minute walk in the mornings. There's a specific name that my meditation group has for this, where you might just be sitting and staring at a wall, or you're just kind of zoning out to like music that you're not following, but you give yourself some white space to see what you're actually into, to see where your mind goes. So I think creating some space and allowing for different thoughts to come in is a big part of it. And then a second piece of it is like, what are those things that drive you? What are those things that will get you out of bed? What are those things that you'll do, not because you have to, but because you really want? And I think about, it's really easy to like bag on accounting. Oh my God, I would never want to do accounting, and how horrible. And some of the most passionate people I've ever met have been accountants, because they truly care that your expenses are getting met and that you're mapping out your life to experience what you want now. And you're getting rid of those, places where you're just bleeding money. And you're also making sure that you build out the future that you want, whether it's a home or a retirement or a college fund for your kids. And even within something that I think catches a lot of flack, like accounting, you can be hyper passionate in that area if that's truly what you're passionate about. And so I think for all of us, just finding that place where this is something that drives me and motivates me, and it's just inherently important for whatever reason.
I'm really glad that you brought that up, because in my experience, I've noticed that almost every man that I know goes through this point where he's become an adult, he's figured out his life, and now things are going smoothly enough. And he gets to rethink all of that. Do I still want to be doing this? Do I want to be doing something different? And it takes a bit of time to sit there and pull apart everything that you think you're supposed to be doing and look at it anew. And giving yourself that space seems like step number one, or maybe even step number 0 that needs to happen. And having a community of other supportive men around, I think that's another piece that's usually missing in our culture.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of times that requires a level of honesty that's not necessarily inherent, right? When you look on social media, you hear and see all the successes, the vacations, the smiles. Here's us and the kids doing this thing. And what you don't hear about is the struggle. You don't hear about the sleepless nights. You don't hear about the question marks of, am I in a life that's congruent with who I am? And for so many of us, we went down this pathway of should. Here's the next step. Here's the next thing. Here's what people in my family do. Here's what people in my industry do. Here's what people that are a man or a woman or identify however they identify on the spectrum. Here's what they do. And at a certain point, I think one thing to suss out with that as well is there can be like an addiction to like needing a struggle. And so sometimes I think you get to that place you thought you were going, and without a struggle, you create one. Like they say, we're no longer chased by jaguars anymore. So we make stress and the mortgage and all these small things within our relationship are jaguars that are chasing us. So we have something to rally against, and discerning, is this something I'm making up to have a sense of struggle in my life? Or is this truly a place where I got there and it's just incongruent? And then if that's true, what are the steps I can do to get back on course?
I love that. And I think that this year, everybody has had some level of this. Things have gotten shaken up. No matter how big of a shakeup your life has gone through, a lot has changed. And it's a good time to sit down and consider, what do I really want to keep doing? What do I want to let go of? How can I give myself space to make these new decisions and to figure out what really matters to me most? That is a really cool question. How do you create space for yourself, Morgan?
I was really fortunate. I had an intuition about, and a lot of my stuff is around intuition. It's about listening to that, not the cognitive thought process. When those little divine epiphanies show up, can we follow them? And I think there's something really beautiful waiting for us when we do that. And October of 2019 had a little epiphany that I was ready to move out of Seattle, which was weird because I lived like 3 minutes from my office, loved my place, life was easy. And I moved an hour outside of the city about a week before the lockdown of 2020.
Into the forest. I remember that.
into the forest. And so I was meditating an hour minimum a day, and I was spending an additional hour out in the forest, right? So I had the freedom and the space and flexibility to be able to build those into my life. And I just brought in a lot of white space, a lot of free thinking. I always recommend this when you're on a walk. If you can, don't have earbuds in. Even though I have pets, if I need to do this type of walk, I leave my pets at home, because if not, I'm so focused on them, I'm not listening to the divine. But I spent a lot of time journaling, meditating, walking in the forest, and just redundantly asking questions like, wow, what's best for me? What's working in my life? What's not working in my life? What would I like to elevate? What can I just slightly shift or modify? And I tried redoing my systems. What exercises are serving me? That was a big one as well. I'd been doing all this exercise and fitness stuff. And at a certain point, I'm like, if I'm trail running in the forest, I'm actually missing the best benefit of being out here. So I stopped running and I just went for a walk every day. And it was counterintuitive for a Nike Just Do It society or a guy who likes to pride himself on fitness, but it was what was necessary. And so it was letting go of the reins and like allowing a different path to come in and consciously looking for it.
Yeah, I have some of those workaholic tendencies for sure. And I don't necessarily want to put stuff down or give myself white space. Ritual has been my retreat this year, though, being able to give myself some kind of ritual space.
Yeah.
I was recently, go ahead, Maury.
Oh, I was just going to ask, I'm curious about the rituals that are working for you, because I also believe it's so independent to each person, right? Like what works for me may not fit into somebody else's life. What things are really working for you and what you're doing, Rebecca?
Well, what's working for me the most this summer is actually something that you introduced me to. It's the cacao ceremony. And you and two other friends at the same time, I think within a week, mentioned it to me. And they invited me to come and participate in one of their ceremonies. And it was lovely. It's basically a short gratitude ceremony where you honor the elements and then you drink the ceremonial cacao, which is interesting. I've known about cacao as a ceremonial thing for years. I was married to a Mexican, and so we had this whole thing with hot chocolate and spice tossed hot chocolate. But this is a different level of intentionality and ritual that I've been doing it. And I've gotten to the point where all of my friends that come and spend time at my house regularly know that I'm doing this. And they will usually ask, hey, can we do a cacao ceremony today? We're going to come over, we're going to hang it, we're going to sit down, and we're just going to appreciate things. It's connecting to the elements and stating your appreciation. So in a way, it's kind of like my 5 Bright Moments game, but taken into a different format and allowing us to share a sip of something delicious and connect with that particular plant in a different way.
Yeah. I think the enjoyment of like ceremony and ritual is really built into us. And I think maybe we've become so like lax in our society, or a lot of us aren't really connected to our lineage or traditions, that we've lost that. So yeah, I can see people really craving that as a way to connect with you. Yeah. Now, what about you, Shawn? Because obviously we're all going through this last year and a half, 2 years of like COVID transition. Like what things have been working for you?
During COVID, I was I went to a retreat there in Denver for Joe Dispenza. And one of the things that I really liked that I took away from that was Joe had the same thought that you were talking about earlier of stop. We operate in most of the time in a beta brainwave pattern. And oftentimes under stress and under having to get things done and being knee deep in should and all the other shoulds that we put on ourselves, we're in high beta. And inside high beta is very reactionary. It's very just like, it's what we would use to flee from the jaguar. And there's really no download. There's really no consciousness. There's really no information there. It's simply just doing. And what I really appreciated about Joe Dispenza's work was that he encouraged stopping and taking a minute. And it didn't have to be 30 minutes. It didn't have to be 2 hours. It didn't have to be a long-term meditation session. He is heavy into meditation. However, it doesn't have to be like anything grandeur. It simply has to be a moment where we stop, drop into a low beta or into an alpha state, like a relaxed, I'm laying on the couch watching TV state, and listen. So one of the things that I took away from that is starting my morning with a 15-minute meditation. And in that 15 meditation, it is a guided meditation. It is simply about what do I want today to look like? What is my vision of the future versus my reactions to the past and what happened yesterday? And really focusing on what I want out of today. And it just takes 15 minutes. I do it right when I wake up because I'm coming out of a delta state into an alpha state. In that really relaxed state, my subconscious is very susceptible to my thoughts at that point. So if I wake up and I start thinking about the garbage that happened yesterday, that's where the day goes. And if I wake up and I think about what I want in the future, that's where the day goes. So I'll spend 15 minutes doing that. And then I take some time and write some gratitudes. And I've done this in the past, the gratitude thing in the past, and it never really spoke to me. And the way that I started doing this now, that's a weird thing to say. Being thankful never spoke to me, Rebecca.
No, I get it.
But it was too rote. It was too forced. And I would find myself sitting there thinking, okay, I'm thankful for this and I'm thankful for that. What else am I thankful for? What am I thankful? What's the no, I got to get to 25 or whatever it was. The way that I started doing it now is I wake up and I go, I see the sun. I'm thankful for the sun. I'm thankful for that pillow that I just slept on. And I got a good 8 hours of sleep last night. I'm thankful for I'm so proud of my kids, the way that they're doing. I'm thankful for my band. And I just start writing. And the moment that I have to go to what else am I thankful for? I stop. And so from that point, it becomes very organic and I feel true gratitude. So I do that, I do the meditation, then I do that. And then I'll just start writing a story of something that I want in the future. Man, this morning I woke up and the sun came over the mountain on top of this lake in my tropical environment right here. And I'm telling you, the way that it reflected off the coffee beans and the avocados outside of my yard was absolutely stunning. You know what I mean? But just write a story like that. Yeah. And I found it really sets the day. Those three things set the day. And they all can come from a place of organic and heart. And it's not scripted. It's everything it's what I love about the podcast and having these conversations. We hardly plan anything. We just decide to start talking. And that's where the emotion is built and where I think true inspired action is built.
Yeah. I love one thing I always think about is I think Nike just do it type people or a personality type people can really grasp onto these spiritual practices. And then they can really just use it in the same way they've used something else. Like it's no longer a substance. Now it's meditation. It's no longer a behavior that's deemed by society to be bad. Now it's running 50 miles a weekend or like whatever that is for them. And I like that you're doing something that's very dynamic and masculine in having that process, but also allowing there to be flow within that. And you don't turn it into just one other should in your life. I really love that.
Nike just do it attitude is what got me started. Yeah. I was like, you know what? I just got to do this. I just got to do this every morning. And the first 5, 6, 7 days that I just had to do it, I just got to do it. And then it turns into something where I've connected with it now, and it's a lot easier to get it done. So there's value to just do it. I don't think any one of us are saying there's no value to that. Doing it towards something that is inspired or in a way that's inspired is the key.
Yeah. Yeah. What a great transition.
One of the other things that I love that you were talking about earlier, and even with regard to inspire action, and in my experience has been that if something isn't going well in my life, I've found that finding something that I am inspired about and really putting energy towards that helps the thing that's not going well go well. It seems to be some sort of universal law of if I'm focused on what I enjoy, focus on doing something that I really am passionate about, then the other stuff raises to its level as well.
Yeah. Momentum, synergy. I think there's so many words for that. And when I'm coming into something difficult in my day, a lot of times I'm like, okay, I'm going to do these 5 little things, just build momentum of crossing things off my list. And then I'm going to hold space for that big thing. And on other days, my energy is different. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go for a workout. I'm going to get all energized up. And then the first thing I'm going to dive into is that difficult thing. And it's almost like kids. Do you leave the vegetable you don't like on your plate till last and know that's what's standing between you and dessert? Or do you go after it first so you can just enjoy the rest of the meal? And, that idea of what do you need to do to get the things done because we do have some kind of have-tos in our life based on how things work out. So how do you balance that?
Morgan, you were talking about you're possibly forming like a men's support group. And as we're speaking, I was thinking, what kind of a cool group would it be? Whereas, yes, this is the men's stop group. You come here, you tell us about what you did for the week because we want to know that you're still taking care of your stuff because we're men and we still got to go. We still got to take care of our responsibilities. And what did you do to stop?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, where do we find those permissions? And I've found myself in a really healthy relationship now where there's really permission for that. My girlfriend, Stephanie, awesome about taking a nap every afternoon. She hits that place where she's no longer accelerating through her day. And she's, yeah, I'm going to go, takes a 26-minute nap, super specific, wakes up, totally revitalized and crushes it. And there's times where, like I've had to really work on giving myself permission to do that if I'm not in flow, or if I get sick, to be like, listen, if I just take an extra day off, instead of trying to multitask at a low energy level, if I just take a day off, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, like I know I'm going to recover quicker. I know I'm going to get more done tomorrow than I would have got done in 2 like mediocre days. And so, yeah, like having a group and being surrounded by people that can support, yeah, definitely performance, achievement, but also like healthy relationship, taking that pause, knowing what moderation looks like, knowing what it looks like to take your foot off the gas and have that be something that's beneficial for everyone around you and not just like some type of failing of grit or determination.
So do you have plans for this sort of thing in the next phase here for you?
Yeah, I'm starting to build it out now and really trying to figure out what it's going to look like. Part of me wants to lean into, here's what other men's groups are doing, and here's all of this. And ultimately, I think we're at a time, whether you say everything's changing based on COVID or everything's changing because we're evolving, but a part of me is really just trying to go, okay, what does different look like? What's needed at this time? What have I wanted that hasn't been supplied to me? Or what have I wanted that a lot of my things, I would get it from 5 different places. Here's my high performance coach. Here's my shaman. Here's my therapist. Here's what I'm receiving through just guys being guys. And like, how do I blend that all together in a way that's, ultimately uplifting and a place that people really want to lean into for camaraderie, friendship, growth, support.
And do you think this is going to be a dominantly online thing, or is it going to be an in-person component?
I think it's going to be a mixture. I think it's going to start online just because so many people live wherever they live. So I'll lean into just a bunch of really great dudes that I already know, Shawn being one of them. And then I'm looking at doing a component in person because I think even for myself, I've been wanting to do it just by myself. Like on a full moon, go out to the forest, burn a fire, let go of what's no longer serving my life. Be really conscious about that and bring in this thing that's just very in our DNA, forests and night and fire and full moons, and then set intentions to come back out of that forest with, okay, how am I going to show up for the next month? So doing things like that in person, eventually building toward weekend or week-long events. And I also just got back from 3 months in Central America. And what would it look like to take a group of men down there to do sweat lodge, to do cacao ceremony, to do, ceremonial type, just amazing growth things in the ocean and in the forest and in the jungle. And yeah, I think I'm looking to just get my start and do that thing. I think Shawn spoke to it. Like, how do you do that thing that starts feeding you? And what's that little thing that you're just enjoying? And then allow it to organically grow from there.
I really think there's some value. I mean, you haven't asked for my 2 cents, and here's my 2 cents. I really think there's some value in bringing back that primal masculine energy, and where you're out in the full moon and it's fire, or you're walking through the jungle and the mountains and taking, one of the best experiences I've had before is no cell phone, just me in the mountains with little food, looking at the stars for 2 nights.
Yeah.
It's just me and my thoughts. So there's no alcohol, there's no drinking, there's no drugs. It's just quiet and getting out there and really getting to the core. That for some reason, that especially being outdoors in the wilderness brings me anyways, and I think a lot of people into this space. It got quiet all of a sudden. Now where am I at? And there's some real value in that, and finding inspiration and stuff.
Yeah. And men and women both have versions of that. And yeah, like some of my best vacations have been a 4-day vision quest with no food or no water. Or yeah, the time that is spent alone in the forest, just connecting to that. And even weaving into this is that idea, like I mentioned that piece, I really feel like we're missing, like ceremony and ritual, and wanting to bring that in a way that's not too rigid or dogmatic, but in a way that brings in deep heart and meaning. And the other piece I think is missing is, like, women have ways that they transition into adulthood. Their cycle shows up, maybe they have a baby. There's some things that they can't avoid this initiation. And for most men, and probably even most men or most people in modern society, there's no initiations into adulthood. And so what can we do to realize, like, I've arrived? I'm no longer who I used to be because I experienced this initiation. And now every part of me is ready for this next chapter of life.
I'm getting the chills because I've actually read a few things lately with regard to initiation for men, with regard to a lot of what we've talked about today. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for just creating a space for this conversation. I really just love and appreciate and admire both you. And what a great way to just share and open this dialogue.
Well, I know it goes back from both of us to your direction too. So we appreciate you very much. So now that people know a little bit more about who Dr. Morgan Oakes is, how do we find you to keep in touch with you about some of the projects that you have going on? Perhaps if there's a guy listening to this that wants to get involved with you or has some ideas with regard to these retreats and ceremonies and that sort of thing that you're talking about, how do they keep following you?
Yeah, so social media, Instagram, Facebook, it's Dr. Morgan Oakes, OAKS. And then also the website is drmorganoakes.com. And there, if they want to, they sign up, there's 6 keys to living your top life. So there's a 45-minute video that's already a really solid tool for personal growth and finding balance. And there's a contact page there. I'm always looking for people to reach out. If people want to have a conversation, I know there's a way to do just an introductory, complimentary 30-minute conversation with me. And I'm also really looking for co-creation. So as this community is coming together, I want people that are willing to express needs, desires, want aspects of what's worked for them in the past, or what they're missing, or what they want to make sure they're not experiencing moving forward. And so, I'm wanting to open that dialogue in whatever way is best.
That's beautiful. And I want to pop in my 2 cents before we go, because these 2 men here, Morgan and Shawn, are probably the 2 men that I trust the most in the entire world. And if you're listening and you're curious about any of the stuff that they're talking about, the heart-centeredness and the divine connection here is amazing. So if you want to have some of that and you want to connect and have some inspired action and some clarity in your own life, I highly recommend you show up with an open heart, and you can't go wrong here.
Much love. Thank you. And much love to you, Morgan. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate you. It's drmorganoakes.com, and also on Facebook and Instagram, I imagine, all sorts of social media there. Definitely connect yourself with this guy. Rebecca, you are truly radiant. This is the definition of inspired action right here off to my left in the belly of the Pleasure Central Radio studios. It's been a pleasure talking again.
Thank you so much. I'll see you later.
Thanks for listening to Pleasure Central Radio, hosted by me, Rebecca Beltran. My co-host was Shawn, and our guest was Morgan Oakes. Technical production by me, with plenty of branding advice from our consultant, Sandy Waters. Dr. Morgan Oakes is a transformational speaker, coach, and healer who empowers the conscious cultivation of mind, body, and spirit through the process of intuitive listening and courageously inspired action. Dr. Morgan's motto is, I want for you what you want for yourself. His tools and skills include being a chiropractor, certified high-performance coach, NLP practitioner, shamanic healer, and energy worker. Dr. Morgan blends ancient wisdom with the tools of modern transformation to bring synergy to healing and evolution. To learn more about Dr. Morgan Oakes, you can find him on drmorganoakes.com. I also get significant creative feedback from my beta listeners group. For this episode, special thanks goes to Bob and James and Rowan. Thank you for your input. And to anyone else I might have missed, you are loved. If you listened to this episode today and were intrigued by something, I would love to hear about it. What really hit home for you or surprised you? Or maybe something from this episode helped you shift a perspective about something important. There's a voice message on the homepage of pleasurecentralradio.com. I would love to hear what made a difference.
and it's as easy as leaving a message on my answering machine. I'm especially interested in any new concepts that motivated you to do anything different in your own life. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Thank you for being a part of the conversation. I look forward to your company on the next episode. Photo credit for the show's main artwork goes to jodyrayphotography.com.